What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. It's episode 740 of The O Show. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Jack O'Hara TV. We are live from the Wynn in Las Vegas, Nevada, here at Blue Wire Studios with the one and only Mike Davis from Fox 5.
How you doing?
Thanks so much for coming, man.
740?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Sometimes I lose count and I got to think in the morning, like, what are we on? Okay. Oh, an even number. That's easy. That's an easy one to remember.
I love it.
When it's like 736, you're like, it's somewhere in the ballpark of 730.
Gotcha.
But, I mean, you're doing your show. You're going to get there one day.
One day. I mean, 740 is a lot.
Well, I also I'm not affiliated with anybody, so nobody's telling me to stop. You know? The first few years when mom and dad are your only listeners, it's like, oh, I could still keep doing it because it's my thing and it's my passion. Like, I started my show when I was 17, started it in my basement or my parents' basement bar in New Jersey with my brother.
God.
Hit record, had no idea what we were going to talk about. I'm like, oh, this is 10 times harder than I thought it was going to be. But I used it as a resume builder in college, and by the time I graduated college, we went through COVID, so we were able to have some cool guests on, and I built my skill set. And by the time I graduated, there were a few sponsors that came along. I'm like, okay, now I'm understanding the business side of it.
Wow.
Then I interviewed Kevin, and Kevin's like, come use our studio. And now, you know, a few moving parts, and here we are.
Well, this is a gorgeous studio, and I love the Wynn. And this is my first time here. This is an amazing studio, and I love the passerby traffic of everybody here. It's an incredible thing. But who was your first guest in the basement of the bar? In
the basement of the bar, we had Mark Zumoff, who's a play-by-play voice of the Philadelphia 76ers, not in person, but just like on my phone.
That was your first guest.
So when I used to do it, I had no equipment. My brother's a musician, so whenever we were home, he's like, all right, you can use my mics. I got the amps and stuff.
Yeah.
But in college, I went to Grand Canyon University out here in Phoenix, not out here, but 4 hours. Right. And I've been out in Arizona ever since, the last 7 years. But I would just use my iPad. There was this app called Voice Memos. And I would just use the app to record, and then I'd use my phone to call in the guests. This was pre-COVID, so Zoom really wasn't like as known then. Yeah. I mean, Skype was, but nobody really used it. And Skype wasn't really that great compared to Zoom once they figured out all the nooks and crannies there. But I would just use my phone to call guests, the Voice Memo app for my iPad, and then whatever quiet space I could find. I remember like the air vent in our conference room at our school would go off every 5 minutes. I'm like, well, that's just going to be in there because I don't know how to do anything
Well, you got to start somewhere, you know. But
I know, like I have the cool story of like how I started, all the the humbling years of what we did. And these are still the humbling times, but they just look nice. It looks a lot nicer out of here and in certain studios compared to just a conference room at your university.
Yeah, well, Zumoff, I love Zumoff. I mean, I grew up in South Jersey, so I grew up a Sixers fan.
He's such a nice guy, too.
He's a great guy. Was a great play-by-play guy. Iverson was like my hero growing up. So, he called all those big games, and he's a good dude.
Good dude. He's got his own broadcast school. I think that's why he initially was just like, I'll come on the show. I'll promote my broadcast. Like, oh, do you want to join? I remember looking back. I'm like, I think he was just pitching me on his business for an hour. But he was a really nice guy. I'm thinking now. Bobby Abreu.
Oh, yeah.
I have a funny story about Bobby Abreu. When I was a sophomore in college, he called me up. He was living on the East Coast at the time, I think in Tampa. He called me at like 4 a.m. It was 7 a.m. his time. I'm like, who's calling me at 4 a.m.? I'm like, oh, my God, it's Bobby Abreu. Because I grew up a Yankee fan. He played a few years for the Yankees.
Yeah.
Because we were supposed to do a podcast that day. He's like, yeah, I'm all set, ready to go. He's like, you want me to fly in for this? I could use my helicopter to fly in or whatever. I'm thinking like, no, like I'm a college student. We're gonna be in my conference room down the hall from my room. Yeah. He's thinking I probably have like a studio set up or whatever. I can only imagine like a chopper flying around my university right by my dorm room. Yeah. Like, oh, who's that? Oh, that's Bobby Abreu. Who's coming in my podcast. I'm like, no, we'll just do it over the phone. He's like, oh yeah, it's 10 times easier. I'm like, oh, thank God. Like I couldn't imagine. But he's a nice guy too. Great baseball player in his prime with the Phillies.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else. A lot of just having friends on. Local people at my school, local players that played for Grand Canyon University, we'd have on. And then during COVID, when COVID happened, it was like, oh, Jordan Belford was doing a webinar that was supposed to be a seminar. Maybe I could ask him a question. And he's like, yeah, pick my brain for 20 minutes or so. I'll give you some time. He was a good guy. Chad Michael Murray, who was on that One Tree Hill show, an actor, really nice guy who took time. Drake Bell, Josh Peck from Drake and Josh, the Nickelodeon show. They were really nice before he got into whatever he got into. I don't know what's going on with him, but I hear not great things out in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. That's my assumption. People
Drake and
tell
Josh
me
was the stuff, though.
it really was. That was
show.
like the show that I
Yeah.
watched growing up. So I'm like, yeah, absolutely. If we can get Drake and Josh, Jerry Springer was someone that I got a chance to interview, and he just recently died.
Yeah.
Bob Saget, I interviewed a few months before he died. So like all these people, Rob Schneider, David Spade, just people who were like, yeah, I'm not doing anything right now.
See?
And you got through the gatekeepers that way too, because
Right.
they're like, yeah, we have nothing else going on but podcasts. Like,
This
it's
is,
the only
I
thing we
mean,
can do.
I hope this isn't, now you got Mike Davis here.
That's right.
Wow, it's going downhill.
No, man.
Okay,
No,
good.
man. I think I said it live on the podcast with Spencer before you came in, or maybe you were here when you heard it. I'm like, oh, the guy, because we were talking about Mark Wahlberg. I'm like, the guy coming in next, Mike Davis. He talked to Mark Wahlberg on Fox 5.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
knows who he is.
Mark was probably, I've interviewed a lot of celebrities. Mark was phenomenal. I mean, I actually was shocked at how gifted he was I think his presence was the most impressive thing to me. That day, there was a lot of media members there, a lot of people trying to interview him, and there was probably about 10 media outlets there. All had to interview him, and he took so much time and grace and care with each individual outlet. I couldn't believe it. It was very impressive to me, just how present he was during the course of the interview as well.
Yeah.
But he's an interesting guy.
Oh, he's had an interesting background. My dad always says he doesn't like Mark Wahlberg because of his teen years and like what he did and going to jail and then coming out of it. But I'm like, no, he was 17 years old. Like, what did you do at 17 years old that you're not proud of? Probably a lot of things. And he was always in the spotlight because Donnie was in the Backstreet Boys, and then he came out with his literally just the first track Mark ever came out with was a hit, right?
Yeah, I mean,
As a rapper.
I mean, yeah, he's had a long career. I mean, from music to acting to now entrepreneurship. I mean, it's an impressive thing, and he's really going to transform Vegas. I mean, I think the entertainment industry is going to just boom here, and he's going to be leading the charge.
Well, it was interesting because you started your interview behind the bar saying you're turning Vegas into your own Boston, basically. He's like, I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, you kind of.
Well, he's so connected, and he's everywhere you look on social media. He's at this restaurant, he's at that resort, he's at that pool, he's at that Albertson. See, he's so present in the community. So being here for 4 years, I was just like, wow, the way this guy has taken to the city as such a notable person in the entertainment space. He's really taking Vegas and just giving it a huge hug, and it's an impressive thing. And I think it's great for the locals here in the community to see that as a big deal.
Because there are a lot of people that live here, too, that you wouldn't think, like big names.
Right.
But it wasn't until Mark Wahlberg was like, I'm going to buy a place in Henderson. They're like, oh, Mark Wahlberg lives here. Let's bring everybody
Right.
else over here. And it's like, oh, there's a lot of big names here.
Well,
now.
Nicolas Cage, Neo,
Whoever, yeah.
certain types of people do live here, but they're not really here to like take in the community and just be out and about and be like the representative.
Oh, yeah.
Of
They just
lot-
quietly live here doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Where Mark came in, he's like, I'm going to do all my projects here now. We're going to promote
Exactly.
Vegas. The Golden Knights winning the Stanley Cup is a huge thing that everybody could capitalize on, because I was telling Spencer, too, like, say what you want about the Raiders coming in and the A's potentially coming in, or maybe even an expansion team.
Yeah.
If, that
NBA.
falls through with the A's or, even the NBA. The Golden Knights were an expansion team. They are Vegas's team. A band of brothers that came together. They made the Stanley Cup final in their first year as an expansion team, and now 6 years later, they win their first Stanley Cup.
It's incredible. And I covered the, Stanley Cup win, Game 5, and I was out and about. It was a long day. It was like, I started work at like 8:30. I was like not done until like after midnight, and I'm talking to people, and the community was just so charged up by this team. And I think I came here after the 1 October shooting, but consistently the community tells me how big of an impact the Knights made after the 1 October shooting, and just taking, the community in and being kind of like some sort of solitude during really difficult times and years. And, that's why I don't think anybody will ever be able to supplant the status and just the notoriety and the beloved nature of how much people love that organization. Whether the NBA comes there, nobody will ever be able to top it, but it is an impressive thing. And to do it in 6 years, that's huge.
Well, could you imagine if they pulled it off the first year?
I know.
Who did they lose to in
Capitals.
2017?
Capitals.
Okay, and the
Ovechkin.
Washington Capitals are like the...
Yeah.
They were
So
like the head honcho.
it would have been nice, but it's amazing how they still did it with, the Misfits and all those players that have, really ingratiated themselves to the community. And I've lived in a lot of cities. Most of the time it's not like that. Like you're in Phoenix. When Durant came to the Suns, is he like, out and about in the community doing car dealership commercials? Do you see him out? No, right?
I remember when they first, because I had like courtside seats the day or two after when they completed the trade for him with the Nets.
Yeah.
He wasn't even in the Suns, like his son's like joggers or anything, sitting on the bench. He was just there with black sweatpants, gray hoodie up. I'm like, I think that's KD sitting on the bench.
Right.
But he wasn't even like wearing the Suns apparel yet.
Wow.
So he wasn't even entrenched into the community with his own teammates at that time.
Right. That's what's so impressive about this team. And I think you can't fake it. People know when you're faking it or you're uninterested. And these guys are so down there. A lot of it is hockey. I mean, hockey players are a lot different than traditional athletes, I think, as well. So there's a likable nature to those athletes in general. But it's a special thing. It was probably one of the highlights easily of my career here. Maybe
really
the top one.
That was just that's fresh, like 2 weeks.
I know.
So that's pretty cool.
I'm still tired from that. I still have a little sniffle from
It's
that.
a good tired though. The coolest thing about, because I'm like almost obsessed with this. I love not necessarily like podcasting, but like just getting to interview people and get to know people and build cool relationships and see how we can collab together in the future.
Yeah.
Like I'm not really saying no to many opportunities unless it's like way out of my way or like doesn't make sense. But I'm like, I want to talk to everybody. And there are times where like I feel sick, but I'm like, I really can't say no to this opportunity.
Right.
And you make things work. Like, are you at a point in your career where, like, obviously working for Fox 5, there's probably things that you pitch that they're probably like, no, we can't do that, or like maybe do it on your own time. But like, do you pretty much just try to do as much as you can?
Yeah, it's been interesting because I've been in the industry for a long time, but Fox 5 has been the greatest opportunity I've had really in my professional career. I came here with a very I was already a morning anchor in Texas. I had a talk show in Texas for CBS. So I was in a smaller market. I come here to Vegas, and I really came to be a part of this show called More, which is an entertainment lifestyle show. And kind of growing from there, I'm still a part of that show, and it's amazing. But I've been able to do so many incredible things, from live reporting to anchoring and filling in and to creating a podcast situation there. So it's been an incredible opportunity. And honestly, the best thing is I have a lot of autonomy. I'm kind of like the fun entertainment sports guy. So I book a lot of my own stuff, and, my sensibilities, and they just, kind of can be put on the forefront, and they really let me be myself, and like as a young broadcaster, when I was getting into the industry, that was the number one thing I was looking for in potential places to grow, and a foundation was who's going to let me be me, and that's the biggest advice I always give to like young broadcasters is like, you got to get your opportunity, and you kind of have to know who you are, which is a tough thing to do. But once you know who you are, if you can get to a place where people invest in you and let you be you, that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's like a 10-year overnight success type thing that you're talking about too, right?
Yeah,
For the most part.
I'm 31. I started really like the dream started in 4th grade.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like,
but
your intuition started at a young age.
Yes. Like knowing that I don't want to be Allen Iverson anymore. I want to be a talk show host, So that was like 4th grade. But it's just been a lot of years, from stand-up comedy to hosting podcasts to creating shows to being an anchor to being a reporter to getting my master's to doing all different stuff. It's been a long time. So you still just like you still are continuing to build and figure out who you are and what you bring to the table and what's your unique perspective and all those types of things. Like I thought I wanted to be a sports guy. That was like my number one thing. And a lot of people just kind of didn't crush that dream, but they were just like, have you thought about being a fun morning guy? Have you thought about entertainment? People just kind of pointed me in different directions, and you take opportunities and you grow and you kind of, create a blend of who you really are.
Mm-hmm. I think because you hit the nail right on the head when it comes to just being a sports guy. Like that was me as a kid, right?
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be Alex Rodriguez, and then you realize, oh, I'm not gonna be that big one day. You know, like I actually, oh, I want to be more like Michael Kay on the S Network, call some games. You know, do the play-by-play thing. And then it didn't really take me till COVID to realize, like, oh, there's a lot more to this than sports. There's the entertainment side.
Right.
There's not that I would ever get involved in politics, but like during that period, like you're kind of aware as to what's going on. So you're kind of building your knowledge and insight in that realm as well, regardless of how toxic it is. But there's different avenues you can go, like music. You know, we're talking about the Foos for like a good 10 minutes before we went on the air, and we'll circle back to that.
You were impressed that I knew the logo.
Nobody does. I was telling you, people are like, oh, what are the two
Am I the first
Ts?
guy in 740 episodes to recognize the logo?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I don't think anybody's ever called me out on it. It's just a hat that he's wearing.
So I'm the first.
You're the first person that's like, oh, Foo Fighters. You
Well,
like
I'm
the new
just
album?
obsessed with their new album. Like
It's
I've been
amazing.
listening to Under You on repeat. Like that's my song.
It's such a nice poppy song because when they originally dropped it, they put out the teaser reel on Instagram and they took out the music on the track.
Really?
And it was just the lyrics. I'm like, oh, this is a dark song. And then you listen to it, I'm like, oh no, this is Foo Fighters. This is good.
See.
I was a little bit worried.
I love moody music. That's like a big thing about me. I love like intense, dark music that kind of has a melodic nature.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I say. Dave Grohl is the epitome of storytelling in rock and roll. Mm-hmm. And because rock and roll hasn't been the number one genre in decades.
Yeah.
But like that's what I grew up on. Foos, Guns, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, all of that. And Dave Grohl has just a way of embodying what he's feeling.
Yeah.
And turning it into great melodies, harmonies.
How old are you?
24.
So it's interesting. I'm 31, you're 24. How did you get so like into kind of older, I mean, Guns N' Roses, all that kind of stuff?
So
How
that
did
was
you get
funny.
into it?
So because I guess Guns N' Roses broke up for like 25 years. I didn't realize this until afterwards, but Slash and Axl had their falling out, and in 2016 they got back together. And I was 2016, so that's 7 years ago. I was 17, I guess. I hadn't been to a concert at all at that point in time. And like I liked a little bit of rock and roll because it's what my dad always played, but I also liked country because that's what kids my age were into on the East Coast. And of course, you have your hip hop, your rap, whatever.
Yeah.
But my dad and his buddy were going to go see Guns N' Roses in Philly. I had a baseball tournament in Philadelphia that weekend. His buddy had to back out. He's like, "You want to come to Guns N' Roses with me?" I'm like, "Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine."
So you knew the top songs.
I knew Sweet Child of Mine, and I knew Welcome to the Jungle. I don't even think I knew Paradise City at that
Really?
point.
Wow.
So I was that out of it. But I'm like,
yeah.
okay, Guns N' Roses, I'll go to a Guns N' Roses. And I hadn't been to a concert, so I'm like, sure. That concert changed everything for me. After listening to all of that, like, It's So Easy, Paradise City, Mr. Brownstone, Sweet Child of Mine, Welcome to the Jungle, Rocket Queen,
November Rain,
of course, Dust and Bones. That whole Appetite for Destruction album made them.
incredible.
Without Appetite for Destruction, there is no Guns
See,
N'
to
Roses.
me, I think if I had to jump in, I would say you probably hadn't experienced live music like that. Because now that's the biggest issue. Listen, I like new age music. There's a lot of great stuff that's always coming out. There's just not a lot of stuff that is live, you know? And it's like, there's a big distinction between rock and roll and when it's live and going to
And
see
it's
a
authentic.
DJ.
Like Axl Rose running around the stage at 50 years old, popping off. One of the most insane singing voices I've ever heard in my life. Great frontman. Then my friends will invite me to like EDM festivals. I'm like, I'm not going to that.
So it doesn't resonate with you when you do
I'm
that?
just like, well, I get the party aspect of it. Maybe I'm not a huge party
But you
guy
don't like
either,
on your Spotify, you're not listening to like a Tiesto song or a Kygo. Like, do you have, you're going to bring it out right now?
I will tell you.
Let's see.
I just made a
gonna have
playlist,
some
actually. The top albums on my phone right now.
Let's see.
We have Darius Rucker, the new Greta Van Fleet album that's coming out, Starcatcher.
I like them, okay.
Space Hog, if you ever heard the song In the Meantime, which was a one-hit wonder in the 90s.
Okay.
Foo Fighters, But Here We Are.
Okay.
Airborne Toxic Event, The Killers.
Interesting.
Toto. Chris
Toto.
Cornell. I love
Chris Cornell.
So
Same with me.
the Higher Truth.
I'm a big Audio Slave guy. That's my...
So I think Gasoline I used as my intro song to this podcast by Audio Slave for like 2 years. It was first I Go Blind by Hootie and the Blowfish. That was my original intro song. And then I changed it to Gasoline by Audio Slave. And then copyright stuff came up. So now I'm just using my buddy's music.
Yeah.
Steve Winwood. Ever hear of
Really?
him?
Yeah, of
Roll
course.
With It. One of my
Traffic,
favorite songs.
Spencer Davis Group. I'm a big Do you have a lot of him traffic or a lot of him solo?
Oh, here we go. Thank you, Nick Days in the production room. So here we go.
Beautiful fingers, by the way.
Kings of Leon. Yeah, I try to keep them clean.
Yeah.
Kings of Leon, Aurora by the Foo Fighters. I love that song.
I haven't really gotten into Kings of Leon, but see, first of all, I mean, Audio Slave. Whenever you have Tom Morello and Chris Cornell together, I mean, that's like peanut butter and jelly.
I was listening. So there's a new song, not a new song. It's been out for a few years. Tom Morello did a song with Slash called Interstate 80, where they're just basically complimenting each other's guitar licks for 4 minutes, back and forth, like iron sharpens iron.
Gotcha.
Amazing. If you ever heard that song, check it out. I was telling, so Foo Fighters, Hootie and the Blowfish, The Killers.
So you're not into any rap, any hip hop, any?
I'm into old, like Jay-Z, Eminem, Lil Wayne.
Are you one of these guys, like when you go on a date with a girl, are you like, is music, having this lined up kind of same belief systems and same interests in music, is that a big thing for you? Or
it's not a deal breaker, but ideally, like, I went on a date with a girl who loved the Foo Fighters. I'm like, all right, that's a green flag. I'm already invested.
To me, I've only met you for about 15 minutes, but I would say if you're on a date and the girl's talking about how much she loves Nicki Minaj, I feel like your eyes would glaze over. Like, you would not be, even if this girl was an 11 out of 10, you would not be able to really sit still. Is this right? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, music is such a big thing because I've been in the car with females who will play their music and I'm immediately turned off. But like I said, it's not a deal breaker if we connect on so many other levels. That is tough. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about it that much because there are a lot of girls our age, or my age anyways, probably your age too, 31, 32, who listen to just straight up EDM rap.
Yeah.
Things that you probably don't necessarily listen to when you're in the car by yourself.
Music is a interesting thing because it really it tells you a lot about a person. You know, it really does. Because are you somebody who's just in the culture and you're following what's big right now? Or are you really, do you march to the beat of your own drum? Or do you discover things? How adventurous are you with stuff? Your range of thought is an interesting thing.
Well, that's why the Foo Fighters resonate with me so much because Dave Grohl, like I said, he's a storyteller. You listen to the lyrics and you know what he's talking about. Or at very least, like you hear a song like My Hero, some people might think, oh, he's writing that song about Kurt Cobain because he was the drummer. And
Nirvana.
But he's like, I mean, there's aspects of Kurt in there, but you can really take my lyrics and resonate it into your own life. And that's why I'm making these songs for my audience.
His interviews with Howard Stern are phenomenal.
Amazing.
Have you listened to all of them?
Yeah, the one that they did with Taylor, because Taylor Hawkins always was side by side with
I know
Dave.
he'd come in studio and all that stuff.
They did an interview like 2 weeks before he died. I met Taylor Hawkins 2 weeks before he died too.
Really?
So
how did that happen?
Innings Festival, which is a festival hosted by Major League Baseball that they do out in Tempe, Arizona.
Okay.
And since all those guys like Harold Reynolds, Sean Casey, Ryan Dempster, all these guys helped put it together. They all grew up in the 90s. They're like,
they love that music.
So every headliner, like Dave Matthews from Dave Matthews Band, interesting interview I did, I'll tell you about. Foo Fighters one year, Eddie Vedder's done it multiple times. The Avett Brothers.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Darius Rucker's done it. Like they bring in guys who love baseball and that were a part of that era.
See, that's amazing.
And the Foo Fighters headlined in 2022, so last year. This was probably a month before Taylor passed, and I get credentialed for the events, go in, do 5-minute junket style interviews with people, and they threw me Shiflett and Remy Jaffe.
Okay,
great dudes. Chris Shiflett, amazing musician, and I think obviously he's in Dave's shadow, but he does his own stuff too. Remy Jaffe, very interesting character.
Gotcha.
And they were giving out T-shirts and catering. They're like, "Oh, you want a T-shirt?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want a Foo Fighter T-shirt, of course." Yeah. I love the Foo Fighters. They're like, "Taylor." And Taylor's in the back and just pokes his head out and throws a T-shirt.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, oh, cool, like a T-shirt that Taylor Hawkins gave me.
That's amazing.
And then I gave it to a girl that I was going to the concert with, who I don't really talk to anymore.
Are you serious?
So that shirt's just
every
gone.
time I see an image of you, you got a Foo Fighters hat on, and you just gave this shirt out to like a rando?
Oh, we were good friends at the time.
Were you were you dating? Was this under
No,
it wasn't
just a friend,
date.
just a friend, yeah.
But you wanted to date her?
No, I don't think so.
What do you mean you don't think so?
We were just friends. I'm trying to think now.
Did she
hadn't
want to date
connected in a
you?
long time. I
Somebody,
don't know.
somebody
I
always
don't
wants to
know.
date somebody. So she either wanted to date you or
Isn't
you
that
wanted to date
crazy?
her.
We always have these conversations with friends where it's like, oh, you're never truly just friends with a female. There's always like an underlying thing.
I mean, I think that's, I'm not, it's not like black or white to me, but I do think in that situation, if you're bringing a girl to a Foo Fighters concert, you're into her. I mean, right?
No, I hadn't connected with her in a long time. Obviously, I wasn't thinking about that. My roommates all were under the assumption of what you're assuming right now. But no, just good person. I hadn't connected in a while. I already had concert tickets. I'm like, yeah, you want to come? And it was a great show. But yeah, I haven't seen that T-shirt since, and I've not talked to her in a while since. But yeah, it's tough on the topic of music and like finding.
If you
a
just
potential
texted her
partner.
right now and said,
Oh,
like,
for sure, I
where's
could.
where's that T-shirt?
I hope she still has it.
Yeah.
But if she does, she doesn't. She doesn't. You know, I made that was my decision, and I can live with it.
You know
But I
what?
still have the story that Taylor Hawkins
That's
gave me that
good.
shirt
It's a-
2 weeks before he died, though.
That is yeah. I'm still stuck on if this was a date or not, but you know, that's
Isn't it crazy? Like we have that
I can't help myself in interviews. I just start
'Cause, like-
asking questions.
because like you have your friend group, right? You got
Yeah.
your guys, your females, and you're never just friends, even on the surface. Like, oh, they're just my friend.
Well,
It's
what
like,
is your
well,
dating situation like? How does it work
nothing.
for you?
I travel too much, to be honest.
You
with
don't go on dates.
I haven't been on a date in months, and even when I do that, they're very unintentional, and it's like they didn't really go very far. Because again, different backgrounds. Maybe they didn't like the music I liked, or maybe they just weren't as intentional with communication as I was.
And how are you meeting these people?
Just locally through friends.
You don't do apps.
I hate apps.
Really?
I'm not an advocate.
Are you sure you're 24?
I know. I'm a 24-year-old going on 55.
I mean, your beard looks like you're at least 56 or something.
That's right. Well, again, it's that grungy feel. I wanna
That's
look
not.
like Dave Grohl.
It's not itchy to you.
No. Well, you have to use certain creams. It's nice. I think I need to use some Just for Men though, because every time I come in here, it just gets more red and more red.
Interesting.
I am Irish though, so I do like it. But no, I don't like Bumble. I don't like Tinder. Tinder seems awful to me. I don't like what's the new one? Hinge.
Yeah, Hinge is good.
All my roommates are on Hinge, so I live with 3 females.
Interesting.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Man, this is like Three's Company.
Right.
Do you even know what that
Or
is?
like-
You're too
or like-
young for
It's
that.
like New Girl, but in reverse.
See, I haven't seen New Girl, but
You'd love
Three's
New Girl.
Company was great.
Three's Company. That's what my dad always compares it
Yeah.
to whenever he sees pictures of us. But yeah, it's always.
Who's the Suzanne
interesting.
Summers in your house?
I don't know if we have one. They're all really cool.
Nobody's blonde.
Nobody's blonde. We have a redhead and then 2 browns. Or
Interesting.
two girls with brown hair, I should say.
So you're not into any of them.
No, they're like sisters to me. I'm able to
Really?
differentiate like who I know. And
You don't
as
have any
roommates.
feel like you. Okay, let me just. Can I paint a picture for you?
Yeah.
All right.
This is fun. I love how intimate this is.
So let's just say you wake up. All right, you're waking up in the morning. You know, you go to the pantry. You're going making some coffee. You're going to your Keurig, all that kind of stuff. And let's just say the redhead that you live with enters into the kitchen area, and she's like, you know, got a beautiful outfit on, something that's very like, whoa, you know, you're into it, right? Even though you would be inclined to have some feelings like that, you remove yourself, or you can't even, it doesn't even resonate with you. Like even if she came in and it was a very, you know, striking situation.
Doesn't even resonate with me. The redhead in my situation is actually about to be engaged, so it's not even a thing. She's actually engaged to one of my former college roommates and friends.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay.
And then the other 2 are just, like I said, I'm very intentional with communication. I don't overthink much. If I have my mind set on something, I do it. These girls overthink everything. They're always anxious about stuff. To me, I'm like, that's not really something I'm interested in per se.
Gotcha.
But I also care and love them about them very much. You know, they've been friends, like I said, sisters to me for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
We've lived together for 3 years now. They got dogs that I absolutely love, that I basically tell people are my own dogs.
Wow, this is like a family. This is like a sitcom.
We're very close. And here's the other aspect right here. If you want to get a close-up on this, very devoted Christian culture, too.
What does that mean? You don't have sex before marriage, or?
Well, yeah, that is a rule. So no sex before marriage. You don't move in with your significant
Really?
other before marriage.
When did you come to this decision?
So I got baptized back in April. I've been a part of this.
Back in April?
I've been,
like this April?
This April. I've always been going to church and stuff, and I've always been ingrained.
Aren't you
in the
supposed to be
Christian
baptized when
culture.
you're like a youngster?
So I was baptized as a baby in the Catholic Church. However, my parents didn't force it on me, and they weren't really big churchgoers either. And neither was I. I really wasn't entrenched in the community at all until I
you
got
were
out to
baptized
school.
twice?
So I was baptized against my will as a baby, and then I was baptized willingly on Easter Sunday this year in April.
I didn't realize people get baptized twice. Interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't. especially I think Arizona and California specifically, Christian culture kind of reigns supreme. In
So
certain
wait, I'm very
areas.
curious about this. So you grow up, you get baptized as a youngster, which is how it typically goes, because I think isn't, you get baptized, you have a communion. Actually, my good friend, I just went to his daughter's baptism, and I went to his son and daughter's communion. So as this is I'm Jewish, so this was my first time in a church actually, and it's my
Nice.
really good friend. And so I go in, and I was like, oh, this is fascinating, because I guess the priest is describing that the reason why you get baptized is because if something bad were to happen, the younger you get baptized, then that gives you entry into heaven, right?
Makes sense.
Isn't
No,
that the
for
concept?
sure,
So that's
for
why
sure.
they tried to do it as a parent. If that's your belief system, you would do it as a youngster. So if something were to happen awful, you would go to heaven as a young person. But now you have two baptisms, so you have like a VIP lounge in heaven, I would assume.
I don't know about that. I'd
No.
say in my culture, I'm definitely the black sheep.
Really?
Like I come on here and I'll talk to all walks of life. You know, like the guy who was in here before you was a male
Yeah.
porn star.
Oh, that's what he was.
They
Okay.
look at that. They'll look at me and be like, "You're talking to a porn star? Why? Like, why do
Interesting.
you need to do that?" Like,
Look at this lineup.
There's
So-
specific rules,
Now
right?
you have me in here.
But then, like, even listening to rock and roll, like grunge music, like if I turn on Nirvana, they're like, "This is so negative. Like, can we put on some worship music?"
Interesting.
And like that aspect of it, and I love listening to worship music too. But like, there's definitely aspects of me that you wouldn't think kind of fit in that certain vibe.
So you're 24. You're 24 now. You got baptized for the second time last
At
April.
24, yep.
When did you come to the determination as a young man growing into adulthood that I will only have sex after marriage? When did that happen?
It was just like the people that I was and currently friends with, my brothers and sisters that I spend most of my weeks with and weekends.
Yeah.
I relate way more to that than I do going out and drinking at 2 a.m. in Old Town Scottsdale or in New York City or in Boston or even here like the nightlife in Vegas, you know? Like I'll go if someone invites me, but I know myself. Like I'm just not that
There's a
type of
happy
person.
medium. It's not like, it's not like it only has to be one night stands or you get married, you have sex after
I
marriage.
think and I've had a lot of friends who were a part of just ingrained in that culture where they were just in the hookup culture. And
Gotcha.
like they're like, eventually you just like lose certain feelings in general. It's just like, I just didn't like myself after a while. And I was never a part of that either, but I'm just thinking like, I was never interested because like,
Gotcha.
if I'm going to sleep with someone or if I'm going to invest my time in someone, I want to make it count with, the right person. And like the no sex or no living before marriage, I'll be honest, very like on the fence about that. And I will go through with that if that's what a future partner wants me to go through
Right.
with, which is fine. Like I have
Right.
no problem waiting. But especially the no living thing, it's like, what if you get married and then you find out that you absolutely can't live together afterwards? That one I'm still trying to figure out. But like, I'm very much on board with those rules as opposed to just living. And there's nothing wrong with this either. Again, like, I'm not one of those judgmental people that says,
Right,
like,
right.
oh, I'm doing it the right way, you're doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
But like, I definitely relate to this a lot more. And I think it's a lot more healthy. I feel like the communication is easier knowing that, like, oh, my significant other isn't like out and about being careless right now because she has certain morals and
Right.
characteristics that some people may not have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm my whole thing is people should do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's admirable that you have carved out your own lane, and you should do what you're comfortable with.
That's right. And like, to me, being a part of that culture is something that I love, but at the same time, there's certain things that I do, like coming out here and hanging out with certain people that they're like, oh, why are you hanging out with them if, your morals align this way? It's like, well, I can hang out with anybody I
Right,
want.
right.
Like, everybody's cool. And I'm confident enough in my own belief system to know that I'm not going to do anything stupid. You know?
Right. That's interesting.
Because they're like, Arizona is very much that culture of like, you got Old Town Scottsdale, which is the nightlife,
Yeah.
and there's toxicity in there, but also a really fun time with, as long as you're surrounding yourself with the right people that you get along with. And then there's the Christian culture that a lot of people, like as a Christian, I can strongly say there's a lot of judgmental people
Yeah.
in that community.
Yeah.
But then there's people who do understand it.
Right.
And I'm not oblivious to that either. Like there are, like my family doesn't really go to church. They're very judgmental people. I'm like, yeah, I know. But you just got to find certain people that
Wow.
resonate with it, but don't throw up their beliefs onto you.
Yeah.
'Cause I've been around Christians like that too, where I was immediately turned off. I went through a whole thing where it's like I didn't really grow up in the culture. Then some way, somehow, I just walked in. All my closest friends were in that culture, And then they kind of took me in. I started going to church with them. Didn't
Wow.
really get it at first, and they were kind of throwing up some of their stuff onto me and
Yeah.
kind of forcing it. I'm like, I don't really like this. But then slowly but surely, I just was embedded into it.
That's great. I love it. I love the passerbys. That's my favorite thing here
Yeah.
right now. This is a beautiful studio, and it's just fun to see all these people. This
That's
is
right.
great.
A few people wanted to come on the show. They're just hanging out. Look at him.
It's fun. Oh,
He's gonna do a backflip. That's awesome.
That's
good
actually-
content.
that's actually amazing. I love that. Yeah.
Do one more.
Do one
more.
more.
One more.
We got a guy doing.
You got to
backflip
clear
right
out
now.
that. Yeah, there you
Wow.
go.
Beautiful.
I always love it. That's like
Beautiful.
his signature.
That's amazing.
I think he wants to
That's
get in. I don't think
amazing.
that's good
Yeah.
enough for him to get in. But
That's a beautiful thing. See, that's what you got to love that about Vegas. There's so much.
You
I've
never know
lived a
what you're
lot
gonna
of
see.
places. Vegas is incredible. There's so many
I
interesting
love
people
this
here.
place.
I've never
Every
been
time I
to-
come back, I see new things. I'll go on hikes in like Henderson too. I'm like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is a beautiful area.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a special place, and it's so funny because like when I moved here, I'd lived so many places, and you move here and you're like, oh, where are you gonna live at the Wynn? Like you don't realize that there's outside communities, and getting to be a part of the community here is such an amazing thing. Henderson, Summerlin, all these different areas. It is a special place.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in New Jersey.
Okay.
South Jersey. So, that's how, that's why the Iverson thing and the Zoom off thing were
course.
bigs for me. So, still a huge Eagles fan and all that kind of stuff. Bobby Abreu, I grew up watching him.
Of course.
So yeah, I kind of grew up there, but I had so many different places I've lived. Chicago and Miami for school. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in LA for a little bit. I've lived in New York. So just all over the map.
East Coast versus West Coast. What do you think? To me, West Coast is the best coast. I
Really?
appreciate the East Coast. I think people on the East Coast are way more intentional than people out on the West Coast.
Okay.
And I think that's where I get my intentionality from with people and like communicating and like making sure like
Yeah.
and just like being aware of certain things. But out West, people are way more supportive. People want to collaborate with you. Like competition is a real thing, no matter where you are. But people here want to see other people win. Back East, I don't really see that ever.
Interesting.
Like it's competition. It's like, oh, you're beating me in this aspect. Like we're not necessarily friends.
See, I actually disagree with you.
Okay, give me your takes.
Um,
Maybe that was just my experience.
I mean, I think people are very similar everywhere. I do think there's sensibilities that come to light dependent upon where you live. I'm a big East Coast guy. I love the East Coast. I miss a lot of those sensibilities, and it's just a big part of who I am.
So did you just come out here for work specifically then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that's been my life, moving places, not knowing a single person and moving there for work. So I moved here to work for Fox 5. I lived in Texas beforehand. I moved there to work for CBS as an anchor and then eventually a talk show host. So yeah, that's kind of how it works.
So, and that's the one thing I feel like other East Coast people, most East Coast people don't have either. Is like when you're there, you're staying there. My parents born and raised in Jersey, their parents born and raised in Jersey. Like for someone to like get out of that mold and go experience new things, I think it's very difficult. I had to convince my parents for like 3 years to let me go to school out West. Like they were not for it at all. Where like you immediately were like, I want to do this job for as long as I can do it, and I'll live anywhere in the world that I need to, even if I don't know a damn soul.
Yeah,
a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
No, it's true, and a lot of it is, that's why talent, all those types of things, yeah, they play roles, they're factors, but it's really, the hard work and the commitment. That's really how things get done, and it's like the people who are willing to take those chances and take those risks and move to places and do things that are out of your comfort zone. That's what it's all about. That's the name of the game.
And what's the worst that could happen? It just doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to. Big deal.
Right. But it's scary, and that's why, listen, people who do it, people who don't do it, I understand everything. I have the empathy to understand all that stuff, but I just knew in my heart that I needed to do certain things in order to be happy with myself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's good. You trusted your own intuition, your own gut, and you took a chance. It's panning out for you, too.
Yeah.
So because obviously the podcast is affiliated with Fox 5.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy more? Obviously, the podcast, I feel like, is more centered towards your project and your passions.
Yeah.
Or like going out on certain film projects for Fox 5 might not be as fulfilling, but it's a part of the job.
No, it's actually super fulfilling because it's all lined up with my sensibility. So, I'm not, you know, when I got on this track, I started stand up in high school. I always knew I wanted to be a talk show host, Letterman, Howard Stearns, Bill Simmons. Those are the types of people that really influenced me when I was a youngster. Um, and as I kind of continued throughout the industry and, became a broadcast journalist, and, I did all those things in high school where I wrote for the school paper. I was a print reporter. I love sports. So I had all the traditional training and tools, but I always knew that I didn't want to be a hard news reporter. I wasn't going to be the guy who was super interested in reporting on a fire or a police shooting or something like that. I wanted to do more interview type stuff, and I liked sports, entertainment, lifestyle, food, culture, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what has driven my career and the places that I choose to kind of work for, and if they, will have me, all those kinds of things. So that's kind of how it has worked. When I've applied to places, they have seen the spark that I have and what I bring to the table when it comes to personality and lightness and lifestyle and entertainment and sports. So when a place syncs up with me with that and they see, oh, okay, this is what we're looking for, this guy can execute that, everything I'm doing there is very true to who I am and authentic. So I don't have, as you're alluding to, like, oh, it's not as exciting to me. No, it is, because it's up my alley. If it wasn't up my alley, then yes, I would feel that way. But everything I do really is
So
up
you
my
haven't
alley.
really done one project that you were just like, yeah, I just got to do it because it's part of the job?
I mean, there are certain things like that as you're getting started. Like when I started in Texas, not everything was interviewing Mark Wahlberg, Yes, I've covered fires. I've covered, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and there is stuff still to this day, of course, but I think it's foolish to think, and it's millennial to think, that you're only able to do stuff that you want to do. That's just not how the world
There's
works.
a lot of entitled people, especially coming up in this industry.
I don't think
like,
it's
oh,
even entitlement. It's just not living in a practical universe.
You don't realize you got to pay your dues.
Yeah, you got to do things. I mean, I started with Howard Stern. I was, an intern. I was a guy grabbing coffee, grabbing food, so I was just trying to take in stuff and soak in stuff. And yeah, you got to do those things to just get a good frame of reference and to have appreciation and to have a good perspective on things. I think it really helps, and stuff doesn't happen overnight, So there's so many things that I love that I do, and there's so many things that in the future that I want to do,
Yeah, and you never know what's going to happen one day. You walk into FOX5 studio, you walk onto the set or wherever the setting is where they need you to be. You don't know what's going to happen. Mark Wahlberg could have punched a dude in the face that was acting up at the bar, and you had it on camera. You'd be like, what am I going to do with this? Or what happened, just a stand-up nice guy, and it's a great conversation, and it's something that you'll get to live with forever, because it's
Right.
Huge mega movie star out in Las Vegas, cool bar setting too, with everybody just there hanging out.
Yeah.
Or if you're on set, say at a fight or something, and you never know what someone's gonna say, you never know what someone's gonna do, and that's the whole storytelling aspect of the job.
Yeah.
That you probably fell in love with.
Yeah. I love connecting with people. I love storytelling. I love, I think connection is a big thing, and that's why I really, I like the short form. I like the long form. This is the kind of stuff that I think is an important thing for our culture and society. I think people need to be able to have more long form connections and conversations and meet in the middle with certain things.
Do you think, and I always tell people this who want to get into public speaking or even podcasting, interviewing, broadcast, television, whatever, having the ability, whether it's successfully or not, having the ability to go up there to do stand-up comedy in front of a crowd, whether it's a club or even an open mic night at some random bar. Those are the best ones because you don't know if you're going to get any reaction at all.
Right.
Or at a club, you might be able to. Do you think having that experience under your belt makes you a better articulator?
Yeah,
as an interviewer?
it was paramount to everything for me. I mean, I went on stage, I think I was 17 years old for the first time, and my parents had to actually take me to the club. A lot of these open mic nights, you got to have a 2-drink minimum. I couldn't even legally buy a drink. So my parents are taking me, they're buying drinks, they're putting little this dude's under 21 bracelets on me, and Yeah, I kind of used it as a tool because I knew a lot of the people that I looked up to, like the Lettermans and the talk show hosts and the Seth Meyers and the Jimmy Kimmels. Like a lot of these people, had a foundation, whether it was in improv or in stand-up comedy. Looking back, I probably should have leaned more to improv, but stand-up I was okay. I was very. You probably won't know a few of these guys, but I did a lot of stuff like David Brenner was a big influence of mine, Gary Shandling, certain types of people. So I had
know both of those names.
Okay, so I did quirky kind of stuff like that, and I was okay. I got to a decent level, but I think I've gotten better. I recently just did stand-up at the Westgate here in Las Vegas, and it was actually a really exciting experience for me. But I did it all through high school, college, all that kind of stuff. And once I became a professional broadcaster, I stopped just because I was putting in so many hours with stuff. But it is a special thing, and it's really informed me in a lot of ways. I think it's helped me not just be an effective communicator, not just have a better perspective and be able to, I think, it's given me the freedom to go for jokes, but also not be so tied to a result. I think that's the biggest thing. When people start in stand-up comedy, you can just sniff on people how much they want the crowd to react and laugh. And if you really see the best stand-up comedians really don't care. Mm-hmm. They're so out there for themselves that the crowd is almost secondary. And they get to such a point where they have such a confidence in themselves and what they're saying that the audience feels at ease and they feel like there's not such a dependency on them to laugh to make it comfortable for the guy on stage.
That's right. And you can relate that to broadcast television too.
Yes.
Like as a host,
exactly.
Or like an interviewer, you're like thinking like, was that a good question, guys? Like
exactly.
You're looking around, it's like, no, you're not going to be confident.
Right.
If you're confident in anything that you do, like we're here right now because we both like to connect with people. We both love good conversation. We both love the foos, like
right.
it's easy and we're just enjoying ourselves and having a good time.
Yeah.
But like people listening to this later, it's like, oh, that was a good conversation.
There's a big thing with that. And I think it's tough to draw connections to every aspect of life with that. But I think it works in dating. I think it works in hosting a show. I think it works in stand-up. It works in a lot of ways. So having that, putting people at ease and having self-confidence, you can never have enough of that.
No, and that's another thing that I don't think happens overnight. Even if you train yourself to think that in like a week or two, being like, no, I'm going to be the best stand-up comic ever. Still going to take 20 years.
Yeah.
To get to a point where you actually feel like, oh, I finally made it for myself. Not necessarily made it like the headliner at the Win and have a residency or anything like that, but just like I'm confident in my ability no matter what to
it's
have
true.
a good time.
Yeah, and you see certain things. Like when I was younger, my crowd work wasn't amazing. I had an agenda. I would come on stage and do my stuff. Most recently at the Westgate, my crowd work was the best part of my set, just normal things and I took opportunities, and it's just like things slow down. It's kind of like, if I were to get into a fight with somebody outside right now, it's not going to be like John Wick having a battle. John Wick, everything is so slow. The moment, like he's been in so many fights, he's had 10,000 hours of practice. He knows what it's like to be in a fight, so everything is in slow-mo. When you start in stand-up comedy, like anything, everything's going so fast. You can't really gauge situations. If an opportunity arises, it happens too quick that you can't jump at it and actually funnel it into your set. Yeah. So things have slowed down a lot more for me. Still not John Wick level slow, but they slowed down more. So I was able to take certain opportunities and say, you know what, I had a game plan here. I'm not going to go into this joke. I'm going to funnel into this.
Right. You can read the audience and be like, I know what's going to work here. I can adapt. What is your set, or what is like your most
Well, I mean, I'll tell you. So first, I mean, this was what was so great about this. So I was kind of hosting the show and also doing a set for other comedians. So it was an interesting night. Barry Manilow was in the audience, who I've interviewed before, who came to my dressing room after and congratulated me, which was a sick
big
moment.
deal.
That was amazing. But so like, for instance, I had a whole set doing some topical stuff, doing some dating stuff. I do a lot of dating stuff. And because dating in Vegas is hilarious. So I was doing a lot of that, but then I look into the crowd and there was like a really pretty lady sitting next to like, not a schlub, but a schlubby kind of guy, I guess.
It's usually how it works.
So I was like, what's going on here? So I start going into this couple, and I'm like, how did you get her? And she says, oh, that's my son. And that's my mom, something like that. So it was a mother and son, and of course that's like gold. You just struck gold. So I start going in on that, and the whole night I would just keep coming back to them. Oh, dude, like, can we go play Xbox at your house, and I'll talk to your mom, like all that kind of that kind of stuff. So, but it was a ripe opportunity that I could really lay into by just being present and open. And that's the kind of stuff that people like. And I think it's the same reason why you go to a Foo Fighters concert, although you've heard those songs zillions of times, that one show is going to be that one show. Yep. It's that one moment where they're going to be clicking this way, playing that way, doing that stuff. People like it when you go to a comedy show and like, oh, that's a raw, authentic moment. Like that couldn't have happened because I planned it. That just happened because it happened. And that's the special juice.
And you're good at your chops enough to know too, to like, oh, I can riff right here.
Yes. And I think I'm better at riffing than I am better at, like if I really wanted to become a top-notch comedian, I'd have to get a lot better. But the material stuff is hard. Riffing is a lot easier for me.
Mm-hmm. And then it just comes down to repetition. There's probably been times where you're on stage and you either like lost train of thought or you tried to riff in a certain situation and you just didn't come out right. And you're probably like, oh, that's kind of awkward.
Yeah.
When it comes to riffing too on stage, and I've seen it from amateur comedians where it's just like, that's not coming off the way you're hoping to. And then you're just up there with a bunch of crickets looking at you thinking like, how am I going to get out of this?
Right. But you need to go.
In my opinion, I'm like, the discipline of being a stand-up comedian, I think if you can get through that successfully, or if you fail a bunch of times, it's going to prepare you for a TV role, being the host of something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I've done it a few times.
Oh, you have?
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Yeah. So performing at a club, great, because they're just looking to laugh.
Yeah.
Whatever I say. But I've done open mic nights where it was just brutal. I thought my material was all right.
Right. What would you talk about?
I'm a big steak guy. I eat steak like 3 times a week. I'm like basically a celebrity at my local Longhorn Steakhouse.
You eat steak 3 times a week?
Probably more, but I eat at Longhorn Steak. I was eating at Longhorn Steakhouse specifically like 3 times a week.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I've trained my body though. I think I'll be fine.
Do they have like a frequent flyer program like at?
Oh, I was eating for free at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's impressive.
I think during COVID, right before I left, I paid the manager a visit. I'm like, I wonder how many times I've ordered steak here. He's like, well, give me your card. I could probably go back and
see. If I were you, I have material for you right now. I'd drop the steak, get into being baptized twice, and not having sex before marriage. Boom.
I think Michael Che had a nice set about, because there was it's one of his specials on Netflix. He did it in New York City, and he was riffing with a guy in front who happened to be a Christian. And he started going into Christianity, no sex before marriage, and all of that stuff, and had his take on it. The guy in the crowd was kind of awkward about it because he's like, yeah, those are my beliefs, but I know you're trying to make jokes right now. Right. But it is like religion. I guess it's politics and religion are the 2 things that people touch on the most in comedy.
Yeah.
And the good ones like the Chappelles and the Bill Burrs and even the Theo Vaughns like get away with it because they're so confident in their ability to make a joke out of it that it works.
Yeah.
But they're still touchy subjects.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be a good comedian to get to that point to talk about those 2 specific topics.
Yeah, and you have to have something interesting to say. Like it's not just about being funny. I think it's about having perspective and having insights. That's, to me, that's the difference maker between elite level comedians and people who are trying to be elite level comedians. It's having something to say. Yeah. It's not always just about being funny and making people laugh. It's having perspective and insights and really having something to say. It sounds
you're
basic,
just stating your beliefs, but
it's
also
not
you have a
basic
cynic
at
attitude
all.
towards it, which makes it funny on stage.
Yeah.
But
I think
what makes them a comedian.
But it's the same thing about good music, good everything. It's about having a purposeful perspective. It's about really having that thought and light bulbs going off upstairs.
Mm-hmm. That's why I think, and he's not a comedian, but Dave Grohl as a front man can just go up there and riff on
he's
stories.
An interesting guy.
He's got a story in every city that he's in about himself or other rock stars, and he'll stop the show for like 10 minutes to tell a story.
Right.
And it's like no one else is doing that, at least from the concerts I've experienced. They might tell like a few like 2-minute story about their life, how they relate to the city, and that's about it though. And then they continue on with their set, where I feel like Dave Grohl really creates this authentic experience for everybody involved. Would you want to? I mean, I'm sure you would if they're in Vegas. Try to get that 5 to 10 minute junket interview.
Oh yeah. I mean, I try to get the interviews with everybody, but I love him. I love him. I love their music. Yeah. The problem is like when I do a 5 minute interview, like with somebody that I'm planning for, I have so much I want to ask them. Like I want stuff like this with Dave Grohl.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you prep your questions that you want to ask, but then you hope a Dave Grohl asks you a question or like does something that
I'm
is
not
great
really
content.
concerned about him asking me a question because, it's more so I'm just, I want to be able to ask something more than just the basic, and I
Absolutely.
think that's, but it's about, because it's, for me, my number one thing with every interview I do, I try to find relentlessly, I try to find an in to get me authentically curious about somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, what my real skill is. I think I have the ability to get psyched up enough about anybody.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about interviewing people and just being like a host and doing my own thing. Like, I'm just like you, where like I know, like, if you're going into a junket interview, say with the Foo Fighters, people are going to ask about the album. People are probably going to ask about Taylor. People are probably going to ask about Kurt Cobain. That still
Right.
gets brought up. You know what the basic questions are going to be. I was a part of a media scrum back on the East Coast last week with Harrison Bader, who's the center fielder of the New York Yankees.
Okay.
And he was down in AA rehabbing. And I knew that I was with like 3 or 4 other reporters. They're asking about his hamstring rehabbing. They're asking about how the season's going. Like, how are you
Right.
going to make it? I'm like, all right, they're talking about his on-field play. I'm going to hit him with like the business side. Like, what's it like being back in the minor leagues and like giving advice to these younger guys? Because you've been through this situation before.
Right.
Do you take them out to dinner? Like, how do you kind of approach that? He's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a great question. And he gave me like a 5 minute long answer.
Oh, see, that's
So I'm
great.
just like, okay, I finally hit like a nerve in his brain. Like,
Right.
I'm asking questions that 9 times out of 10 people aren't asking. And I knew that going in too. Like, afterwards, the head of media was just like, can we use those questions for our social media? Like, people don't ask those things. I'm like, everybody should be asking questions like that. Be curious about the person,
Yeah.
not necessarily like the character that they're playing on screen.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It's just it's digging deep, diving a little deeper into things, and just, having a real curious thought about stuff,
Mhm.
but I think you have to do the work to be curious, like I think for some people, yes, I'm a curious person by nature. I started going, like, I have 9 million questions about this living situation with you and these 3 girls. Like,
Yeah.
I could do a 2-hour interview just on that. Like, I could ask you 12 million questions just about why you eat steak that much.
Yep.
That is fascinating to me, actually. So I'm naturally curious, but I still feel that it's important to make sure you do the due diligence and the work so you can be extra curious or have an informed perspective with that curiosity.
Oh, of course. And then you have background knowledge that they weren't expecting you to have going
Right.
into an interview too. Like, how did you know that? I think that's what Sean Evans of Hot Ones does so well.
Yeah.
Because he'll ask questions while their mouths are on fire, and they'll be like, how does he know that stuff?
Yeah.
Who's that other interviewer? Really good at asking questions that people are like, how did you know that about me? That's not even like on Wikipedia or anything.
Huh.
Short little dude.
Oh, is Zach Galifianakis between 2 ferns?
No, not him.
I'm joking.
Not
Okay.
a he's
That's
not
just
like
a
a
plug for
celebrity.
me that I
Nordwar, is that his name?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that,
He's
did I say
great.
that right?
Yeah.
But he's one of those guys that just
He's in
can
the hip
ask-
hop world. Yeah, he's good.
But I've seen him interview Nickelback. I've seen him interview NBA
Oh, really?
guys.
Oh, I
Like,
thought he
and
was more hip-hop.
He'll ask them questions. They're like,
Rap.
dude, like, do you know my mom or something? Like, how
That's
did
crazy.
you know
yeah,
that?
he's
question?
good. The human something. Yeah, Nardwar.
I'm stunned. My brain
I like
was
him.
triggered enough to figure out the name of that of Nardwar.
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm never gonna figure out. Oh yeah, Nardwar.
He's
that's his
OG
name.
though. He used to be like
He's been
when I
around
was in
forever.
like middle school or elementary school. I used to watch his videos.
Really? Who's, as someone, you've worked with Stern, you've worked obviously with a ton of different reporters and stuff. Joe Rogan's the #1 podcast in the world. Nardwar is a great interviewer. Who's like the interviewer that got you kind of
I mean, Howard Stern's the best interviewer on
Of
the
all
planet.
time.
On the
Yeah.
planet, I really believe that. But everybody has different things. I mean, I think he's an incredible conversationalist. Bill Simmons, I think, is incredible. I'm a big Colin Cowherd guy.
he's great at storytelling.
He's great. I like his perspectives with things. But, there's a lot of people, all different people have different approaches. I like Tim Ferriss's podcast a lot. I like Bill Maher. I'm a big Bill
Bill
Maher
Maher's
guy.
great.
So that, everybody has different approaches to things, but I think the biggest thing that I take away from Howard is that I could listen to him interview somebody that I have zero interest in. And by the end of that interview, if they are promoting a book, if they are promoting a new TV show, if they're promoting anything, I am very compelled to want to purchase it or engage with it because he does such a good job of humanizing people and just getting people to open up. And I think sometimes a lot of podcasts are very casual. This is a very casual situation. I'm kind of more in the middle. I like casual, but I kind of like more pointed stuff as well. So I think I'm a happy medium kind of guy. So everybody has different things. Joe Rogan's very free flowing. Howard definitely has more of a prep that I'm intrigued by.
And he was the first guy on air that you could say from both ends of the spectrum. He was the first guy who asked very curious questions that you really couldn't find anywhere else on like Fox News or Fox Sports or even ESPN or, just in the sports world alone. It was like there was an agenda. You were asking the three questions, the most common questions that the world wants to know.
And because he's not a sports guy, his sports interviews are fascinating.
Like his Tom
Brady interview might be the best interview I've ever heard.
Amazing.
It's so, and which I love. And that's a very fascinating thing to be an outsider. I think actually gives you an advantage a lot of times because that interview just goes so differently if you're a reporter on ESPN. It's just, it wouldn't be the same thing. So amazing. Reggie Jackson interview, phenomenal with him. So anytime an athlete is in there, I really love it. He's a big music guy, so like Howard loves music, but there's just interviews that he's done that are just, I've literally had situations, and people say this all the time, where it's like you're on a grocery run or you're doing something, you're listening to it, you're heading to work, and you're listening to his interview, and you arrived at your destination, and you can't physically get yourself to leave the car because you're just that tied to the interview.
Yeah. Howard says, I believe, maybe he's changed his mind since, but he always said that Conan O'Brien was his favorite interview of all time.
Yes.
Have you ever watched that specific interview that he's talking about?
So he's had him on after the fact too.
And he's like, you're an
I
idiot.
don't know why he said that. It's definitely not my favorite interview of his.
Just for him, and he's like...
He just loved it because he came out with a book, and he basically, when he was promoting, he's like, oh, this is my favorite interview I've ever done. I think it was maybe because he wanted to identify with him or identifies with him as a talk show host and was intrigued by a lot of things about his life, being a Harvard graduate and his circumstances growing up with his family and different types of things. So I don't know. It was interesting that he said that. But yeah, I don't agree. I don't think it's his best interview. I think the Tom Brady could be.
Yeah.
Eddie Vedder's with him is incredible.
It was like the first time he ever went on a show a few years ago.
The first time is always the best with him. Like the first time somebody
How did he not get Eddie Vedder before
well, it's just,
2021?
I think...
Was that just Eddie?
I think it could be. You have to have something to promote, but you also have to be willing to want to dig deep and dive into those conversations. Howard years ago to Howard now is a very different conversation. I think they're both amazing. It's kind of like listening to Everlong, electric or acoustic, and everybody has their preference. I like the acoustic. I definitely loved his old stuff. It's one tone, but as he's evolved as a human being, I really think it's his acoustic stuff, the later on stuff in his career, that is remarkable work.
And it is cool because he's been doing, 40 years
Something years, yeah.
Because, people evolve and your questions and your curiosity changes. Yeah. He's always been curious, but, now that he has more knowledge in his brain, he can ask more questions that nobody else can really fathom in their brains that enter the mindset.
The process of stuff. I honestly have never been such a Pearl Jam guy. Just wasn't.
Pearl Jam was the quote-unquote dad band for me growing up.
Okay.
When I heard Eddie Vedder's voice, I'm like, oh, I'm at a barbecue in my backyard. My dad's flipping burgers. Okay. Where I just started appreciating
I wasn't, super about it. I was always more of, Green Day, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm way old school. Clapton is my favorite musician of all time. But Steely Dan, Beatles, Zeppelin, that was just more my thing. Rap, hip-hop, all that stuff. So then... when I heard the interview with Eddie Vedder, of course, I knew the big songs. But once I just learned about him as a human being, it just like, it compelled me. I just wanted to like seek out all the Pearl Jam stuff I could.
Who's the one interview? Last question I'll ask you. We got to wrap up here soon. Who's the one interview that you haven't gotten that's going to be like your validation interview per se?
Ooh, validation.
Because I got into this, I'm like, all right, I have my top 5. And
Who is your top 5?
From 5 to 1, Jack Black,
Ooh.
Howard Stern, which is going to be a tough one, Michael Kay, voice of the Yankees, Chris Jericho, professional wrestler, Dave Grohl, number 1.
Oh my God. Wow, you got it. You know what? I don't know if I really have one. I mean, there's so many people I would want to interview. I think when I was younger, it would be Allen Iverson, but I already did that. So
You've already reached the promised land.
I guess Clapton, just because I love Eric
Clapton
Clapton
cool.
so much. Probably. Yeah, that would be the one.
He does a song that all of my Christian friends hate with Ozzy Osbourne on his latest record called One of Those Days. And in the chorus, he says, it's one of those days where I just don't believe in Jesus.
It's on Ozzy's album?
Yeah. So Ozzy just came out with a new album. Taylor Hawkins plays the drums.
Wow.
Eric Clapton does guitar with Zach Wilde on 2 or 3 different tracks.
I gotta listen to
They got Jeff Beck before he died.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a huge collaboration. Post Malone's on it, I believe. Slash plays.
All right, I gotta listen to that.
It's really Ozzy's got a ton of great. I mean, it's all auto-tuned, but it still sounds like Ozzy.
Yeah.
It's still good music.
Oh, cool.
But we're gonna have to do this again sometime.
I know.
We'll probably talk here as soon as we get off the air. But I got a lot more I still want to talk to you about.
The O Show. I'm happy I was finally here. It's great to finally meet you.
I know, and that's the other thing, like collaborating and coordinating times with people. I'm so used to it now. It's like we could have done this 2 years down the line. I still would have reached out like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? I'm in town again.
Right. It's crazy. Well, I'm happy we finally met and, got to learn a lot about you.
And where can we find your podcast and where can we find you on social media?
So you can find me on social media at Instagram, Michael Mike Davis. You can go to michaelmikedavis.com to find me. But here in Vegas, FOX5, watch me in the morning. The More shows from 10 to 11, Monday through Friday. I'm also on the morning show and different other things. And I have 2 podcasts of my own. One is the sports, centric one at FOX5. It's called The Vegas Huddle. So a lot of good guys on there. Oscar De La Hoya, Spencer Haywood, Raleigh Fingers, a lot of interesting characters, long-form interviews. And then also Dry Heat with Mike Davis, which is kind of Gilbert Gottfried, a couple other interesting folks, Grand Funk Railroad. So it's more the entertainment long-form stuff.
So what you're saying is you're not doing too much right now.
Yes,
You got a lot of downtime.
I have a lot of downtime.
But guys, go check out Mike Davis on social media. This was episode 740 of The O Show. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Jack O'Hara TV. And that's how you do that.
Wow. Man, dude.
Ugh.